Hello, and thanks for tuning in. As always, this is Reverend JR, and today we're going to finish the video response to Thought Slime. Previously, the last point he made was this.
Who knows what kind of technological marvels we could be living with right now if everyone on Earth was fed, housed, and had access to education.
That was a refresher, so you can remember where we're gonna pick this up.
Incidentally, if you're asking yourself why you should have to fork over money to support other people, that's why.
So what you're saying is, until we have the entire world covered for the basics, you shouldn't be allowed to buy DVDs, because people shouldn't be allowed to make them, because neither of these things feeds people in Africa? Why are you buying luxury goods when others can't afford them? Shouldn't you be giving away everything you worked for, so that others can have the things you're asking other people to throw away everything for? Where, exactly, is the wealth cutoff? The amount of wealth I can have before you think I'm supposed to give everything else away? Will you, or will you not be giving away all of your wealth in the same way?
You would, and have, benefited from the support of other people, even if only indirectly.
Yes, and I also pay taxes to be part of the system of people supporting things that we all use. Others have also benefited from my contribution to society already. Why shouldn't everyone who doesn't pay taxes be subject to conscription? So they can work for those things too, instead of relying on a handout. Can I force them to work if you're going to force me to work for them?
The more we support one another, the greater the rewards we get collectively.
Oh, I see. That's why you spend your money on luxury items from Amazon, instead of sending it to Africa to feed hungry people.
The reason all the best advances in history come from people whose basic needs have been met is because those are the only conditions which allow them to have time left over to advance things.
So you're trying to tell me that people are more apt to save their money and spend it philanthropically when there's not an economy of scarcity to compel them to do so? Scarcity is an amazing motivator, and many revolutionary ideas have come about because people didn't have basic needs met, by some people lacking those basic needs. I'm not arguing we should starve people for their own good, like Malthus, but I'm also not sitting behind my computer telling you why having a computer means you're starving people. Again, Thought Slime, you could sell all of your belongings to get money to send to people who are hungry, but you aren't. You are doing this despite the fact that it is why you claim it is an absolute necessity, because people shouldn't have things like computers until everyone has food. I don't think you're a hypocrite anymore. I think you just have too much cognitive dissonance to understand why your points just, kind of fall apart. You worked for your computer in exactly the same way as Jeff worked for his wealth. Why aren't you willing to give up all the things you purchased on Amazon? Never spend 1 cent on anything that isn't strictly keeping you alive. It is because you do, in fact, understand that blind communism or socialism is detrimental. As you just pointed out, capitalism has led to all the things you enjoy, and you don't want to give them up. It doesn't make real progress. Look at the Trabant. I agree that there's a problem which needs to be solved. I simply don't agree with your means of forcing everyone, but yourself, to fix it. If you won't be equal in the solution you keep dictating to others, why should any of them listen to you? Does the golden rule apply? I want Jeff to give all his things away, so I'm going to keep all of my things for myself, and even get more of things from Jeff's company, but Jeff shouldn't have things if he has more things than I do, because people with exactly the number of things I have are good, and everyone else should make themselves even. Naturally, I don't have to be a part of this, because I'm special.
You can't figure out how to launch a rocket to Venus while you're wondering where your next meal comes from.
So you're telling me, you think that if we just gave North Korea $1 billion of Jeff Bezos' money, that the hunger situation in his country would magically fix itself? How do you intend to fix hunger there only using money? Should we just stop spending money on rockets, since rockets don't feed anyone? Again, I would like to end world hunger as much as you, but you haven't told us how you're going to fix it. You've just told us to throw somebody else's money at it, And as a taxpayer, I'm telling you it doesn't work that way. Money is only a part of the problem, and only a part of the solution. And it certainly doesn't work everywhere. In fact, dumping too much money into a poor country often makes things worse by creating artificially high demand, which causes massive inflation, and ends things up worse than they were. Kinda like Germany after the First World War. Could you imagine if the dollar was worth 4 trillion marks again? Do you think that kind of inequality would help the situation if it was suddenly happening in every underdeveloped nation in the world, thanks to a sudden influx of $30 billion per year into their economies? Imagine he suddenly gave the 34 poorest nations in the world their own current GDP per capita for the next 4 years. That's $30 billion per year, give or take. That's a significant portion of the world's population even. Not only would that cause insane inflation in their currencies, it would also cause the currencies of the remaining countries who received none of this to suddenly skyrocket compared to them. The sudden influx of our currency into them would drastically devalue them compared with ours over that time, and the US dollar is one of the strongest in the world. This would destroy their economies in roughly the same way it destroyed many European ones after the World Wars, and you would end up with a higher net poverty than you started with. As much as it might suck, there's no solution to these problems that can be fixed overnight by the influx of some foreigners' wealth. It would be exactly like if every single American were suddenly to have won the same lottery all at once. It would be a nightmare. Oh, I wonder if he's going to treat this seriously or not. Place your bets now. Actually, don't gamble. Give your money to a local charity or spend it in your local nonprofit. I personally like the Eagles because I can drink there and the money goes back into the local community to help, kids in the community and stuff. There's plenty of other good nonprofit organizations around too, like the VFW, the American Legion, the Red Cross, the Lions Club, and even many churches have good community outreach programs, soup kitchens, hunger drives, mission work, and so on. Sure, I don't agree with them on everything, but a good community meal is still a great investment for my belly, and for helping the local community. Not all aspects of religion are bad, after all, not even the socialist or capitalist ones.
Actually, capitalism lifts people out of poverty, so if you truly care about poor people, you should support capitalism.
That's not particularly a good counter-argument, and it sounds like a straw man. Let's see what he says. At least he's acknowledging the counter-arguments, unlike some other apologists I know.
Oh, does it?
Don't get me wrong, I like sarcasm as much as the next person, but that delivery is just too weak. Oh, does it? See? Much better.
Because here we are, it's the end of history, and only neoliberal capitalism exists on the global stage as a major player, and wouldn't you know it, there's still a lot of poor people around.
In fact, there are indeed still lots of poor people. You know, though, it's amazing what the labor unions of the early 20th century achieved in this regard, though. You know, there's not many labor unions in communist socialist economies, after all. You can't fight for a minimum wage when your entire economy is based on not having a wage. You can't fight for the right to earn better living conditions when you advocate for everyone having the same ones. You can't demand better pays for riskier jobs when there is effectively no pay. Again, I feel like a broken record, but I promised I would finish this, so we're going to persevere.
But let's accept the premise that capitalism lifts people out of poverty for a moment, even though it's absurd.
It's not as absurd as demanding that everyone live in poverty just because some people are impoverished, I don't think, but okay. There are some decent arguments to be had for why socialism is useful by itself, but this really isn't the place.
Let's ignore obvious counterexamples like the crushing debt imposed on Haiti by the IMF and World Bank.
Are we also going to ignore the part where those organizations pay taxes into governments who actually go and help them also?
Why Why is anyone poor in the first place? Why do they need to be lifted out of poverty? We have everything we need to end poverty right now, forever.
Yeah, and yet you keep spending your resources on things that don't do even that, even though all your basic needs are met, in large part by a society funded by taxation. Do you ever wonder why that is?
According to Oxfam, billionaires alone added enough wealth in 2017 to end extreme poverty 7 times over.
You know, a lot of them also started out impoverished. Just saying, some of those people exist despite your protestation that it cannot happen if their basic needs aren't met. Again, I'm not advocating against helping the less fortunate. I certainly didn't grow up rich. What I'm saying is, it shouldn't be compulsory just because King Cuck says so. Heed the royal King Cuck's decree. All wealth shall be redistributed according to my will, at my leisure, in my fashion. I am not required to do this, however, as I am the king, and therefore exempt from my own morality here.
Now sure, some of that wealth might get parceled out to the poor and lift them out of poverty, but we have more than enough resources to eliminate poverty right now.
Again, we don't, but it's a noble idea that makes people feel good about the implications of it existing. An argument from emotion, if you will.
We can eliminate it without you or I, or anyone but the 2,043 billionaires in the world even noticing a difference.
You mean, apart from where you suddenly can't buy cheap electronics on Amazon from China because our respective economies would collapse and we'd all be in a state of poverty due to the economic ramifications of suddenly giving those Chinese people even less reason to seek the gainful employment and make the cheap things for you? Nah, I'm sure no one would notice. I'm just being paranoid.
The only reason we don't is because we've chosen to base our entire economy on letting a few people have almost all of everything.
Well, you got something right. You do in fact choose to spend your money on things you want instead of spending it on poor countries in other parts of the world directly. It's a choice, I guess, is the point I'm making.
Okay, Mr. Hypocrite, you made your video using things made by capitalism.
Oh hey, do you think he's gonna address this very valid criticism head on? It's a bit different from the ones I've put here, since I'm not talking about what is actually produced in said economies, but close enough, I guess.
Nothing is made by capitalism.
No one makes money in capitalism? That kind of shoots the entire argument in the foot.
Nothing is made by socialism.
Socialism doesn't make people less poor?
Nothing is made by feudalism, monarchy, or fascism.
Rules are not made?
No ideology can pick up a screwdriver.
Oh. Well, I mean, he's right. No ideology can compel people to work, I guess. The dream of achieving success never motivates anyone to do anything, and that's why nothing has ever been done in the history of the world.
This video was made using things built by workers.
Oh, you mean those people who decided to engage in a capitalist system to increase their standing and cover the basic needs. Fascinating. It is a choice, remember, you said so yourself.
And I want those workers to be compensated more fairly for that work.
You've been telling me this entire video that fair means working so other people can get things you have. How can you be more fair by giving less to the people who aren't working than who are? Shouldn't they just work so that you can compensate other people who are not them? According to your philosophy? This seems to run contrary to your entire video thus far. I genuinely do not understand how you think this suits your point, when it seems to imply exactly the opposite. Should people be compensated more for differing kinds and levels of work, and all of them who work should be compensated more than those who don't? Whether or not you use currency to describe it, that's still a form of capitalism that runs contrary to your premise.
That isn't hypocrisy, that's gratitude.
So you aren't grateful for the people you insist other people should graciously give their money to instead? If you're so grateful, why not buy their products at the full markup from the producer of those goods instead of forcing them to sell through Amazon because you won't.
You're describing corporatism or crony capitalism.
I've not really heard that argument before, but let's listen.
Yes. When I'm criticizing capitalism, I'm always criticizing crony capitalism or corporatism, because those are the only forms that capitalism can take.
So you're telling me you lament the death of small business, like, for example, even those which exist on eBay, or in reality in brick-and-mortar stores all around you, even as you tell us how much you use the corporate one. You do realize you can, spend your money elsewhere, right? You could spend it in your community, or on small businesses, or avoid corporations, or avoid those people you think don't represent your best interest. Instead, you use corporate businesses to feed your addictions, and then complain that they're taking all your money?
So-called libertarians often complain that I'm not addressing the imaginary capitalism that they'd prefer, where nothing bad ever happens.
Meanwhile, you want an idealistic imaginary socialism where nothing bad ever happens, like oppressive socialist governments forcing their citizens into poverty with literally no hope of escape. Your entire argument revolves around the idea that wealth distribution would happen without any sort of hang-ups in the same regard. Can you not see how this is an example of using your own argument to its logical conclusion rather than a statement of fact?
Well, I don't criticize libertarian capitalism for the same reason that I don't criticize a country being run by hot dogs.
So you think that those forms of capitalism don't exist? Somalia might disagree with you.
It wouldn't work, and it can't happen.
Of course not. That would require you to spend your money on things that don't involve Amazon or other corporate interests. And that would be asking far too much. It worked before unionization happened, though. I wouldn't say life was better then, but it certainly worked. Alex, I'll take the Wild West for 2,000, please.
As fun as it might be to make fun of.
So you're arguing a straw man that doesn't exist in reality as though they do.
It's called natural selection, survival of the fittest, Charles Darwin. Have you ever heard of him?
What? What even is this argument?
Animals do compete for resources, that's true. But they also cooperate for resources.
So capitalism and socialism both exist simultaneously in nature?
They do not, typically, hoard insane amounts of resources while their compatriots starve.
No, but they also don't go around giving away resources to other groups just because they might starve. This is a terrible argument you're setting up. Rabbits breed until they destroy the entire ecosystem, for example. They don't care at all if rabbits in other areas are starving, as long as they can eat and breed. Again, it's a terrible argument, but most animals also don't set up governments or ethics panels or formal economies either. We humans are unique in this regard.
And all intelligent animals have some sort of social structure that involves mutual aid.
Citation needed. Are seals intelligent, for example? You know they literally crush the weakest members to demonstrate their superiority, wiping out unproductive members in the process, right? Penguins, they'll steal your eggs just to have them while you freeze to death. What's your point? I mean, even domesticated animals will engage in these sort of opportunistic traits, and I'll be damned if any domesticated dog will let another stray eat his food. Normally, a domesticated animal will protect whatever you give it in defense of keeping you and itself alive, before it will share the resources you give it.
Consider the world's strongest ant. Alone, he can be stepped on and crushed by a mere Danny DeVito. But working together, a colony of very dumb and weak ants can defeat nature's greatest predator.
Those same ants will build a colony and screw up any ant that tries to intrude on its territory. They have no problem giving tons of resources to the queen, while many of their compatriots starve or die trying to collect food for her just to keep that queen alive. You literally used ants as a reason not to give one person all the access to the resources, a species that is largely dependent upon keeping a very tiny minority of its population alive to keep the colony growing. If an ant tries to take something that should, in their mind, belong to the queen, the ants will destroy that thing, even if it's other ants.
the mighty and fearsome goose.
Yeah, but they'll also fight off and not share with anything that isn't one of their own ants. Kind of like people who only buy from Amazon instead of eBay, or whatever. Be like ants, my friends, because otherwise the socialists will come for you, or something.
So too are people stronger when they're working towards a common goal.
I mean, yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's better to keep nature's secrets to yourself, though, so you can release them slowly and get that Nobel Prize all for yourself.
Oh, so everyone who uses Amazon is a bad person? Huh, you bet you think you're better than everybody.
I didn't realize that moral grandstanding was an argument.
No, I don't think you're a bad person if you use Amazon. All consumption is unethical under capitalism.
Did he just imply that consumerism is unethical if you pay for the things you consume? I wonder why he doesn't then just pirate the things he wants digitally, for example, or use YouTube or some other free service to get them legitimately free.
But you still need to consume stuff to be alive.
Yeah, but you don't need to consume anything from Amazon to be alive. You don't need anything other than absolute basics to be alive. You went even so far as to make the entire point of your video that anything which does not directly help those in need is wrong. You aren't helping those in need by spending your money on things you can get for free that others are providing for you, right? You can't enrich the lives of those truly needy people by spending your money on a Kindle, can you? That's at least $70 you spent not feeding some hungry person, after all. And it doesn't do anything your computer or cell phone can't do. To that point, your computer and cell phone don't do anything the ones at the library can't do, and those are literally provided by the kind of socialism you're advocating for, yet not participating in, by virtue of having your own things. I'm glad this video is nearly to its conclusion.
It's no worse to buy it from Amazon than anywhere else.
It is, though. You do not, in fact, have to buy these things. You do not, in fact, have to buy them from Amazon. You choose to spend your money there instead of from the manufacturers of those said things. You choose to spend your money there instead of at your local place that also sells them. I agree that Amazon is not a bad place to buy from, but according to your own logic, it is, in fact, the greater evil.
I'm not trying to put you on blast.
People are starving in socialist Venezuela.
Again, I say to you, what?
Venezuela's not socialist, you nerds.
Did you really spend time setting up your own straw man to argue against? Venezuela has the exact kind of poverty you're talking about eliminating. It's exactly the kind of place you're advocating sending Jeff's money to.
If you have another rebuttal that I haven't considered, please send it to me on Twitter. My handle is @SubwayCanada.
Is this snark? Is this loss? I did, in fact, tell you I made a response to you in your comments section. I'll try to remember to do the same again, but I can't share links to your comments, so you'll have to click my face to get there.
Capitalism does not incentivize greatness. Capitalism incentivizes profit.
I mean, yeah, to some degree that's true, but you aren't going to make much profit if you're exactly the same as everyone else. You must innovate to get people to buy from you, and this is evidenced by the popularity of Amazon. They did something incredibly innovative, and you choose to shop at them instead of their competitors, who might make more profit with a higher margin, or by selling higher quantity at a lower profit margin. They convinced you that you need to buy from them for some reason to survive. If that's not innovation, I'm not sure what is.
And exploits and commodifies greatness. You can't become great unless you're lucky enough to be born with the right tools and opportunities.
As we discussed earlier, a great many billionaires started as dirt farmers in some backwater station of life. Yes, luck is a variable, but it doesn't go away just because everyone is given equal access and opportunity. Sometimes, a lack of opportunity motivates people to greatness.
And even then, there's no guarantee that your greatness will be put to use for you or the greater good of your community.
That's a good point. Just because small business is better for an economy in your model doesn't mean you're going to use them instead of the bigger ones. Just because charity is preferable in your narrative doesn't mean you're going to engage in it as selflessly as you demand others to do so.
Your greatness belongs to whoever successfully monetizes it.
To some degree, that's true. You can't pay those working class plebs unless that product sells, and the product won't sell if people don't know you're good at building it.
If that's you, congrats on your billions.
If it weren't for people like Thought Slime giving them to you, you wouldn't have them, after all. Congrats on your business model that he pays into.
If it's anyone else, get back to work.
Or, come up with a great idea. Pitch it to investors. Get the backing, and someday become the rich person you want to see in the world. I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing right here in this video. I want people to support me, obviously, and so I'm creating something I think that people want. I am innovating my skill set to match up with the demands of consumers, so that one day I might also have an idea people want to pay for. I mean, it's probably not going to happen, but it is better than sitting around complaining about people who have, while I don't actually strive for the same thing. Thank you to my patrons.
Time is money.
Yes, it is. This is the fundamental property of economics. Time is a resource. Spend it wisely. Much like you're doing right now, spending your time watching my video. YouTube isn't monetizing me though, so this one's free, more or less, entirely funded by my patrons. Aren't you glad I have patrons who think my work is valuable? I am. Thank you again.
Nobody deserves to be poor, to be hungry, to be left behind, while the resources for everyone to live healthy and fulfilling lives languish in the bank accounts of a handful of rich mutants.
Meanwhile, in another reality, Thought Slime is paying his money to those poor people instead of Amazon.
You know what else nobody deserves? Nobody deserves $1 billion. Nobody. Not one person on God's green earth.
Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Not Jeff Bezos, not Elon Musk, not Oprah Winfrey, not Steve Buscemi, not Batman. And to have $1 billion, $10 billion, $100 billion, and want more, while 1 in 9 of your fellow human beings suffers and dies for want of the resources that you possess, that, my friends, that is entitlement.
Then convince your legislatures to raise taxes on them. I realize you're in Canada, but seriously, a lot of those people even advocate for higher taxes on themselves to help solve the problems you're addressing. It isn't my fault my government won't tax them higher. That's also no reason to suggest that they should be destitute by virtue of giving up what they have earned, just so you feel better about using their things to your own ends, so that others are less destitute. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need things like reward and punishment, but we don't live in a perfect world. We have to make do with what we have, and we have to strive to fix the systems. Simply abolishing them at the whims of some dude on the internet isn't gonna fix that. The rest of this video is just cats or something, so that's where I'm gonna end this one. If you enjoyed it, or if not, hit the appropriate thumb. Click on that subscribe button and ring that bell if you're so inclined. I mean, YouTube's still gonna serve you more of my videos or not, based on its own algorithms anyway, but it makes us feel good. If I learned anything from this video, it's to do what makes you feel good. Share this video like it's the cure to hunger, and I've got it all. If you want to know how to get your name on my screen, check out my Patreon. Even $1 a month gets me one step closer to doing this full time, potentially, and providing the fruits of my labor for everyone. Throw your money at me like I'm a starving person, or whatever, it's your money, I'm not going to tell you what to do with it. Don't fund me unless you want to. Anyway, as always, this has been Reverend JR, signing off.